Welcome to the B-Sides and Beers podcast.
Welcome to B-Sides and Beers, episode 24. Tonight we're looking at the 1995 album from Rancid, Out Come the Wolves.
How you doing, Mike?
How's it going?
It's about time. I'm doing fantastic. This is the best I've felt all damn week, and yeah.
Hell yeah.
Right on. Ready to fire it up. So yeah, what do we got going on for brews this evening?
Well, you start.
Oh, yeah, go for it. No, go for it. Absolutely. Mine's old news.
Kokanee. There's something.
Kokanee.
What do you got in your head there, man? It looks.
I got some. I just got some Lucky Lager.
Some Lucky Lager, eh?
Lucky Lager.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, I got. We're going through some more of this Tay Light Brewing. This one is a Peace Park Root Beer Porter, and it's a 2.5%, and they are out of Port Coquitlam.
2.5. You're going down.
Did I say 2? Did I say 2.5? Dyslexic. 5.2. Damn it.
Okay. All right.
I have
that's
serious,
like a rattler.
I have serious dyslexia, and yeah.
That's a porter, you said?
It's a root beer porter, and you can definitely taste and smell the root beer.
Really?
Yeah, it's wow, it's fucking awesome.
Tay Light. If nobody listened to the previous episode, or you listened to it the next 2 weeks ago, this is Local Heroes by the Bomber Brewing Company, a double Pilsner. And I'm spilling it on the keyboard.
He liked it so much he's drinking it again.
Oh, I went out and bought it just the next day, and I came back with another one. Absolutely.
You're definitely. This isn't a back-to-back podcast.
No way. Yeah, I'm wearing a different shirt and everything.
Fuck.
And everything.
Yeah. This thing's double dry hop though for massive fruitiness. So,
Oh man.
Yeah. 7 unique hops from 7 BC growers, all in harmony. So
that seems like a bit much. That's a lot. 7? Can you taste all 7?
Oh yeah, man. I can just pick it up like nobody's business. Number 1. Oh, that's that one. Yeah.
And it does taste very fruity, as they say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's actually pretty good. Like it's definitely different than a regular Pilsner. But now I totally understand what these mean, because this is where they got all the different hops from. These different breweries. I think that they just kind of put them all together. But yeah, 7% on this one, but it's pretty tasty. So there you go.
Gee darn. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
WT fuck.
All right. So I'm drinking a Dark Matter. And I've actually done the research, and I know what the fuck I'm drinking this time. It's
nice.
Actually a black IPA.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But it's not like kick you in the face like IPA. Usually I don't like IPAs because they're way too hoppy for me. But this is quite nice. You can taste the chocolate like overtones.
Oh yeah.
It's not like it's not like like your usual IPA. It's nice.
Very
it's good.
Cool.
It's doing the job.
Fantastic.
I've been finding it a lot too when I go to different liquor stores to try and find something different. The majority of the microbrews seem to be IPAs or certain variations of it, and that's one thing that when we ever get some brewmasters on here to chat, I'd like to find out why they would focus so much attention on those.
I sat down with my good buddy Brian, and he's not a brew master, but he's done brewing before and distilling as well, and he's pretty like into the beer scene. And I asked him, like, how come it's all IPAs? How come everything is like fucking pale ales and IPAs and then sours in the summer? Like there's so much more out there. And the thing is, like, it comes down to numbers, or at least this is what he told me. And I like, maybe someone can refute this, but it costs a lot of money to can. So you got to can something that people are going to buy. So you don't want to take risks on something, that might be a little bit out there or a little bit too European or a little bit whatever. Because I was asking him specifically, like, I love Belgian beers, and how come there aren't a lot of Belgian beers out there? There's a few. There's like Daggeride does Rainshine, I think it's called, which is a nice sort of like Belgian styled beer. But there aren't a lot of like Trappistes out there or anything like that. And it's just a numbers game. He's like, do you know anyone else that would buy that out of a can, like at a liquor store? It's just not worth the risk to a microbrew to do that.
Right.
So they do stuff that people know, IPAs and pale ales and pilsners and sours.
Even just
right?
more of an interesting lager would be cool.
Yeah.
Change that up a little
you get
bit,
those.
right?
Like once in a while, you'll see a dark lager or a lager ale or, some different stuff. But yeah.
Like Alexander Keith's is like the very first India Pale Ale that I had ever heard of. Like when I was in high school, I was like, what's an IPA? Like, what is that? Like,
yeah.
And it just kind of was sold to you. It felt like after that point, it was like, everything is an IPA. Everything is IPA from now on. Right. And yeah, I just find that too, Mike. Like there's just, you go in the liquor store and it's just like, okay, like it's all IPA in here. It's all the microbreweries that are doing it. Right. So, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense with you're only going to sell what people are going to buy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure that'll change because what was it before IPAs? I don't even know.
Lagers and pilsners, probably.
Lagers and pilsners.
Basically, yeah. And drafts and gotta have my draft beer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're talking Rancid tonight.
Rancid.
That's right. Out come the wolves.
Okay, so my very first question on this is, why did you pick Out Come the Wolves, and do you think this is their strongest offering out of 7, 8 albums?
Whoa.
Sorry, 9 albums, possibly coming up 10, who knows?
Oh yeah, they crank them out like every 3 or 4 years. So what was the first question? Why?
Yeah, sure. Why?
All right. My answer to your question 1A. I think that was the first time the first time I'd ever heard of Rancid. Much music. Out Come the Wolves. And what was the name of that song?
Destination, oh no. Ruby, 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 Soho.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Salvation.
Want your salvation. Oh,
Whoa.
yeah.
I can't believe people live life. Anyway, so that was like the first time I saw him, and I was like, that's not bad. So that came out in 95. So, we were all into grunge and sad, depressing music from the West Coast. I mean, these guys are also out of the West Coast, right? They're out of San Francisco.
Out of Cali.
Different vibe altogether. Just like it wasn't just my first introduction to Rancid, but it was like my first kind of introduction into like I guess you would call it the third wave of punk or pop punk or whatever you want to call it.
And even the world of ska. I mean, they were so ska influenced that it's massive, right?
Yeah, and I had heard Operation Ivy, but I just had never taken the time to really understand what that was.
Right.
So like I knew there was something called ska, and I knew that like these guys had come from it in some form or another. I didn't really quite understand, but I think
what I like though, man? I like that there's ska, but there's no horns. I like that.
Organs, right?
Fucking there's Hammond organ on there, but there's no like there's none of that, right? Like real big fish kind of stuff. Like you know, and I mean that has its place in the 90s musical history, but like Oh,
I love it, just not every song.
Right. And
Yeah,
it kind of like
yeah,
feels
yeah.
like you hear those you're good, right? But I just like the fact they don't have horns on there, but it's still got that ska feel. It's kind of got that Sublime feel to it too, a little bit, right? But
Yeah,
anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to add that.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Is that I think it kind of like really took this new wave, if you want to call it, of punk rock, where like No Effects was kind of like dipping into ska a little bit, and like the kind of like bro punk, which wasn't really all that authentic. I mean, it is what it is, and who cares really? But these guys were like punk all the way through. They had the pedigree, Operation Ivy.
Definitely.
I don't know if Lars had anything before Rancid or not.
I didn't find anything.
I couldn't find anything either.
Yeah, he had some pretty kick-ass solo albums like during Rancid, but
It's so good, yeah.
yeah, a couple of really good offerings.
But I mean, he didn't come in until this album, wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure.
I think this was the first album that he joined them in.
Really?
I don't think I
didn't know that.
He was on I don't think he was on Let's
Let's Go. Maybe not. Are you sure?
Hang on. So it was Let's Go who was the first one. Sorry, my bad.
Let's Go.
Yeah.
So then it's like, so you got that right. You got like a real awesome kind of interpretation of what was going on around then, and that's sort of like the beginning of this weird poppy ska movement. And you've got this sort of pedigree, authenticity to them, and then musicianship. I mean, Matt Freeman. So like I've talked about bass.
Unreal.
Yeah, some of my influences as far as being a bass player, and I would try and listen to various bass players and try and mimic them, but like Matt Freeman was just way too fucking fast.
Shred.
That solo on Maxwell Murder is one for the ages, man. That's unbelievable.
And the way that he does it, it sounds like he's just about to fuck up, but he doesn't. It's awesome. It's like a car that is about to go off the road doing 120 miles an hour, but it doesn't, with like flames shooting out the back. Like that's Matt Freeman, right? And you know what? Some people think he might be a shitty singer, but I love it. I love the fact that they highlight different styles. And I think, again, like I was talking about when we were discussing Mike Patton and like the exercise of control over chaos. And I think like Rancid might do that a little more than Mike Patton, but there is that chaos bubbling under the surface, and it seems like it's about to fall apart. I mean, Tim Armstrong, I couldn't understand why he sang like that at first.
I love it, man.
It's so good. It's so
and unique,
not perfect and unique, and just something that it fit. It was just like, and they still, to an extent, they still are good. Like I'll put them on if it's a hot day and I want to drink a couple beers and I'm outside doing whatever. Sure. But I think when Out Come the Wolves was just like, it was from front to back, solid.
Still is.
Yeah. Still is. Yeah.
Still is.
Okay. What was question 2?
Do you think it's their best offering?
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I'm not a punk guy. I mean, I enjoy the genre, but for me, yeah.
Well, the cool thing with them is after all these years of listening to Rancid and decades of listening to Rancid, and even up to now, it doesn't feel like they've had a bad album. There's been some that haven't stood up to others, but I couldn't call one bad album, like something that I would just not listen to, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at the first their self-titled Rancid album, and it's a solid album without really any hits. And then you go to Let's Go with Salvation, and what the hell else was that? I mean, they were just starting to get into hits, and then you get into Out Come the Wolves, and every song is so like it.
Well, there's
I'm
lots of
getting to the
hits on
point
that
now-
album.
Lots of
right?
hits, and right now I'm getting to the point as a listener that I'm starting to prefer an EP format of, okay, put out 5 of your best songs or 6 of your best songs and let that ride. Now, most of the albums that I listen to, I get tired after 6 songs. I'm fired up, and then I get to about the 6 or 7 songs, like, yeah, okay, I want to listen to something else now. But there's 13, 14 songs on an album. Like, I just get bored.
Yeah, but you're chasing that like front to back though. Like when you find a front to back,
Yeah.
it's
on.
Then it's on, and you're just like, thank God that these still exist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing. I
And-
guess if I want to call myself old, I still like the album. You know what I
Definitely.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
I still like that. I find it really almost like a ripoff, but I know it's not, when these bands will release like 4 or 5 songs, and then they'll release an album, and all those 4 or 5 songs are on that album, and I'm like, well, fuck, like I know half this album already, right? And yes,
Yeah.
it's good, but I wanted it as the whole thing. I just wanted it as, like you said, front to back, rather than, okay, I know this song, I don't know this one. I know these 2, I don't know this one. Like, just give it to me as one. Release one song so I know what's up, and then that's it, right? And I know it doesn't work like that anymore. I get it, but that's just me being old.
But it could be a thing, and I know albums are slowly starting to come back, like a front to back. But I really like the idea of a 5-song EP, even if you never put out a full length again. And bands that have come out now where, you know, instead of putting all this time and money into 12 songs, take your best 5 and just release 5 songs every year. And by your 3rd year or whatever, you've got more than enough material to gig and play a solid full show.
But just don't put those EPs into an album then.
No, definitely. Don't even do a full album.
keep 'em
do a
separated.
short. Just keep it simple. Keep it lean and tight to 5 or 6 songs, and then I want to play it again because I'm excited to play again, and then I'm excited to play it the 3rd time because it's still fun and it still has the energy, right?
Yeah.
Where you get to song 10 on a whatever, an Offspring album or that kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, now I just want something else, or I'm bored or whatever. So,
But going
Yeah.
back to Rancid and Offspring, though, like they were kind of that bridge almost. It feels like Rancid was like on the other side of the water, though, almost, right? Like you kind of had your Green Days and you had your
Yep.
Blink 182s and you had your Offsprings and stuff
well,
like
Blinks
that.
was way later, but yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like even that early stuff, right? Like it was
Yeah.
like different, right? Like Rancid sounded different, but they were still able to make that crossover almost to those
Yeah.
hits, right? Like
Yeah.
Yep.
but they were still important in that whole thing because they definitely didn't sound like Green Day, but they were during that time and during that whole, and like same producer too, right? Like same kind of who was the guy that did the producing? Jerry Finn, and he did.
There you go. Yeah.
he did Green Day Dookie. He did Pennywise. He did like MXPX, whole
Yeah.
bunch
Yeah.
of that stuff, right? The album is mixed by Andy Wallace, Nevermind, Rage Against the Machine, first album, right? So you got some pretty heavy hitters on this album for those guys, and it's just a totally different sound with that Rancid sound compared to what else was going on and what was big then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And what's interesting is so you mentioned Blink 182. They weren't scared to like collaborate with people who were on the other side of that, right? So you've got what's his name? Travis Barker.
Yep.
from Blink 182, and they did Transplants. Although, like, not my
I
favorite.
like that.
I like Transplants
It's
too. yeah.
cool.
They had some cool stuff. Yeah.
That guy's the screaming rapping. I don't know. It kind of dates itself a bit, but
Oh, definitely.
whatever.
When I need a fix for that, it's a solid offering.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not an everyday thing.
Yeah. But going back to the EP thing, which is super interesting. Okay, Out Come the Wolves has 19 fucking songs on it, and it's under an hour. It's under 50 minutes.
Yep.
The
Right?
first track's like a minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's a minute 25.
Yeah.
And it's fucking killer.
Oh yeah.
And they're just like, it's just like a boxing match, right? It's just like left, right, left, left. You're just getting punched in the face in this album. And it's great.
And it's fun every time.
Yeah.
And when you look at, you were talking about the bass part. I love how solid the bass is, and I love the tone of it.
Yeah.
And I love how it sits in the mix.
Yeah.
Because quite often the bass is somewhat buried behind other things.
It's supporting.
This whole album feels like it's featured almost, like it stands higher out in the mix than other parts that it usually does.
Yeah.
And I'm so floored over that because I can hear all that he's doing, and it's amazing. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
musically
for sure.
and lyrically, it's a great album, right? Like, I think that there's some great musical sides to it, and I think lyrically as well, it's probably a little
Strong.
underrated. Yeah, but it's just he's got lots of topics in there. He's got lots of things he's discussing in a very short song. That's just like, you know, I got to get this out right now, and then boom, I'm on to the next one. And it's a totally different topic, but lyrically, I thought it was still fantastic, right? Like, and I listened to this album again. Like, I haven't listened to this album in probably 5 years, right?
Okay.
So it's been a while for me, but I did listen to it back then. So I listened to it a lot more objectively this time when I put it on there, but I could hear it totally different than I did back then, right? Like, I can hear the lyrical side. I can hear. It's just funny how that stuff changes with you as you grow older, right? And you just get more of it, and you're like, all right, I get what you were trying to say in 95 now, right? Like, I was 15 then and didn't know what the hell I was doing. I still don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I got a little bit of more knowledge, right?
yeah.
So-
And you were focused on different parts at the time too. So
Totally. Yeah.
you know, when you don't, you're at that age, you're either super into the lyrics or you're not,
Or not. Yeah. And it was probably
kind of
not.
thing. That's just the two sides of it. And it took a while to get into the lyrical side. I've always loved the vocal of it, but like you said, now, I mean, getting into the lyrics, it's like, this is super cool and well done. And they're just well-written songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And like we said, the vocal styling too is also good on it, right? Like, just the way he
Yeah.
delivers those vocals is cool.
Totally original.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a shot in the dark kind of thing. I mean, either you love it or you don't. So,
I don't know how you can't, though. That's the thing. Like, I don't know how you can't love it.
and you know what? To be honest, like, I think I'm more of a Lars Friedrichsen fan than I am Tim Armstrong. Like, to me, it's funny because you're talking about sort of listening to the lyrics and having a different perspective on it now. I kind of just like transcend back to when I was younger, when I listened to it, and I'll remember some of the lyrics and like think about, like, yeah, he's probably talking about whatever park in, I don't know, San Francisco or something. But for me, it's like, it's a feeling. It's just like a raw energy. And I don't really derive anything much more than that from it. Like, I've kind of tried to look into, like, okay, what kind of guitars, what kind of amps do they use? What's their like pedal situation? And I've read a lot of conflicting stuff, and, you know, sometimes there's pedals and sometimes they just turn their amps up all the way until they, you know, they overdrive and they distort on their own. And
Gretsch and Gibson and
Right, and
Mesa triple rack done.
right, like a big hollow body and a fucking SG, and that's it. And someone who's just like killing it on a jazz precision, I think is. I don't know. They switch out the drummer all the time, so I can't really. I have no idea.
Most bands do.
But Yeah, Lars Friedrichsen is like, that guy is just insane. I think he's one of like my favorite musicians, and like, I don't know if I can explain it. It's just someone that I kind of idolize. I wish I could get a skunks tattoo on my forehead. And I wish I could just be a fucking punk rocker the way that he is, just unapologetic, just
and not
straight
come off
up
like a poser. Like that is you.
Yeah,
Through and through. Yeah.
Now,
through.
Then if Dane, if Mike asks you two questions, then I got one question for you, Dane, because I read a lot of this because I had never really heard of this before. But do you think they sound like the Clash?
No, not at all. I'm sure there's influences, but
yes and no. Okay, now that I actually think about it, yes and no. I mean,
because a lot of what I read was that this is Rancid's a Clash ripoff, and Out Come the Wolves is like the epitome of the Clash ripoff and all that kind of stuff. And like, I listened to it again after I read that, and I was like, okay, I can see some of that. There's some merit to that, but I don't know. Vocally, it's different. Even musically, it's different to me. But I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think there's some crossover for sure. I think there's definitely some influence. Most definitely some influence. But I mean, like, Joe Strummer is Joe Strummer. You're not going to mistake that guy for anyone else.
Yeah.
Same goes with Tim Armstrong. You're not going to mistake that guy for anyone else. Like, the canvas might be similar in a way. Like, there's a lot of stuff that comes from, old kind of ska, and like, you can go before the Clash when you're talking about like the Scatolites and whatever, but like I think there is some similarities for sure, and I think like they're good. They're great influences, and how can you have something great without being influenced by other greatness, right? I mean,
I agree with that. Yep.
Why not?
it doesn't all come out of thin air.
It doesn't all come out of thin air.
Everyone is influenced by something in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's whether you're able to make it your own or not.
Yeah, and even if they do, I mean, that's totally fine. But then there's two strong vocalists in Rancid, and then there's Matt Freeman. But like, and for the most part, like Tim Armstrong, like most people will think of him as the lead singer for sure. But like, there's other, like the fifth album, like they had a self-titled fifth album. There's a couple songs on there that it's Lars, and he's just fucking screaming like a motherfucker.
Yes,
and they're killer. That's
so good.
That's a dark album compared to Out Come the Wolves, and it's another one of my favorites. But so they've got like a little bit of variety, a little bit of complexity in a genre which is like quite simplistic, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. Fantastic, but like very formulated. But yeah, short answer, sure. Yeah, there's lots of similarities, but why not? Why not be influenced by one of the greatest punk bands ever?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
What else?
You think Rancid's millionaires? Do you think they're millionaires?
Yeah, they are.
You think?
Yeah, for sure.
They've been doing it for long enough, and they still have a big enough fan base that they put out enough material that people can give a shit about, that they will never be forgotten. So of course they've got followers that are gonna buy their merch and their things and see them live. And
yeah, I think about all those kind of punk bands like that. I think about like NoFX, MXPX. I think about those kind of bands. I'm like, are those guys like still making money? Like, do they
definitely
still?
Yeah, I think you can't be relevant. I mean, if you think about it, like, it's kind of a dead music genre. I mean, unless you're kind of like a a punk rocker or you're looking for it, right? It's not shit you're going to hear on the radio. You're not going to see a beer commercial with fucking Rancid playing in the background or whatever. But they're still relevant. You still hear them in bars, pubs. Like, I don't think that's by mistake. I think like they've crafted an image around themselves. It's not all like fucking punk rock and drugs and just being like, I don't care, man. There's a lot of thought, I think, put into the sustainability of their brand.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it's Rancid or the Transplants or, you know, whatever, I think they reinvent themselves over and over again, and they're still able to sell out like huge venues.
Definitely.
And, you know, they have the pedigree, but they also have the longevity, and they understand, you know, how to do that. There's how many, I mean, I can't count them on my hand because I can't remember them, but there's a ton of punk rock bands I used to listen to back in the day that God knows where they are.
Yeah.
Framing fucking houses for all I know. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, I think they were very smart in how they portrayed themselves, like as this authentic punk rock group, and it's believable. But at the same time, they sold the fuck out. They totally did.
Yeah.
They're millionaires because of it. So
I do not agree with the sellout idea. Now there's a difference between you're a band, say you've got Rancid and you've got their first album, and then you've got Let's Go, and then you've got and Out Comes the Wolves, and then selling out is taking taking your main idea as a band and flipping it and changing it enough to appeal to the masses.
Sure.
So Rancid did not do that. I guess the most popular the most popular band that anyone could possibly think of that did that would be Metallica. When you go from Injustice for All to Black Album, now you've got Injustice, and then they take their break, and then they come out with Black Album that is nothing like anything they put out before, and then now they're this big radio hype. They can appeal to the masses. That's selling out. When you change your style, like if you look at Green Day, and you know all these original punks that they sold out. Well, no, they didn't sell out. The music that they put out from their first album to Dookie, I mean, when they hit big with Dookie, it didn't change. It's like everybody just came aboard with what they were doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So selling out is like, okay, well, this is what's cool now in industry. Let's do this now.
So maybe
like all the 80s, all the 80s and 90s metal bands that switched to having ballads because that's what was selling at the moment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That kind of a thing.
So
is a
then,
sellout.
okay, then I'll flip it on you. Do you call Pantera a sellout then?
No,
because that's completely changing your style.
No, because that was different. So with Pantera, they started off a certain thing because they had to play that style. Just because with their glam stuff, that's what was going on, and that was the only way you could get gigs is playing that. Now you get Phil Anselmo in there, and they're like, okay, now let's do something completely different, because they weren't massive in their glam days.
No.
So I mean, if most people don't even know their glam days, they just know Cowboys from Hell and On, right? And they weren't jumping aboard someone else's style because it was popular. They carved their own and did their own thing, and they're one of the most unique metal bands ever. So
it's funny though, like when I think about it, like I probably can't even name to you on one hand how many bands have sold out. Right? Like I don't know of any other bands like that have sold out in that definition of selling out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it doesn't feel like there's that many, but when I think of them, I think of Metallica, I think of Green Day, I don't know if I could come up with many more than that though, off the top of my head, right? Like, but I don't know. It feels like Rancid had some hits, but I think it's the old thing of like, should punk bands be making money, right? It's kind of like the Rage Against the Machine, the whole mentality of, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, and now you can
Unless you pay me
$300 for a fucking ticket, right? Like, it just doesn't add up, right? And that's the main reason why, Mike and I did not buy tickets to go see Rage Against the Machine when they came, right? Or when they were supposed to come before COVID.
How much for tickets?
Oh, too much.
I think they were 300, weren't they?
Anywhere from $300 to over $1,000.
Yeah, man. Like I was
for
like,
one ticket.
I texted Mike and I was like, "Here we go. Like Rage is coming. Let's just go see him, and we'll go down to Vancouver. Done, right?" And then looked at tickets, and it's like, oh, like it's just something about it. Like Rage Against the Machine taught me not to buy those tickets, right? Like you told me not to do that back in the 90s, so. Why would I do that? And now they're just sitting on everybody's money, thanks for the cash. COVID came. We're never touring again. So
no refunds.
You, I got all your money.
Yeah.
No refunds. Yeah.
That's their next track right there. It's called No Refunds.
Fuck you. I won't play till you pay me.
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's like, I don't know I think Rancid found some hits, in that. I think that but they kind of stuck to the pedigree. They stuck to the formula. If we want to go in that definition of selling out, I think that they still stuck with it. I just think that they found some hits, and they got a good producer and a good mixer, and I think that probably helped them too. Right, got them on the right path. But
but a lot of people say signing to a major record label.
Yep.
If that's keeping the band alive, if that's like helping them pay their mortgages and helping them like
eat, how dare you eat?
Right?
You signed with this label, and now you can eat, and now all my fans are pissed off at me because I don't have to sleep on someone's floor,
right?
And I can actually eat food that's not out of a gas station.
Exactly. So I don't know. I mean, you can't stay a fucking gas sniffing punk rocker forever, right? Like you got to do things to allow yourself to like continue playing music that people love. So
I think the general population doesn't understand that though, right? I think they just want to be like, it wants to be punk. It's got to be punk, which means there's no selling out. There's no, giving into the man, all that shit, right? But I think that in the end, it's like, you got to do what you got to do. So, in order to keep this train rolling. But it's just contradictory to what punk stands for. And I think that's people's biggest problem.
That's a tough one. Mm-hmm. It's a tough one.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have stayed consistent and they have stayed relevant in the genre. So I think that's huge. Mm-hmm. And they haven't brought on, mumble rappers, and they haven't brought on these other acts that are big at the time with a certain pocket of generation, and they've pretty well stayed true from what I could tell. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, there you go.
And they put out proper classic albums that still are strong today, that I can, very few that I can listen to back to back and not be bored of.
Yeah, they're consistent.
And it's kind of like that classic punk album. Like when I put it back on again, I was like, this does not sound like 95 really, but I guess it kind of does. But it's just kind of a classic offering. It's got a little bit of everything on there, right? It's got the ska, it's got the punk, it's got some sing-along stuff, like you're in the bar kind of feel, right? Like there's lots of that on there too. Lots of oi-ois, and it's just fun, right? Like it's just a fun album that way. Yeah. Yeah. But I can see, why you chose it. So it's a good one.
Yeah, and just to follow that up, I think like it's just it's a timeless album, and in a genre which is kind of easy to date.
Definitely.
Yeah. Totally.
So I mean, I could listen to Ruby Soho. I will be listening to that song until I'm in my 80s.
Yep.
because it's just a great song. It's just a well crafted, fun, great song.
And that's like maybe half the reason why we named our daughter Ruby too. So that's why
There you go.
from that song. So
Nice, man.
yeah. And Ruby
So there you
Tuesday's
go.
the other half. So
Ruby Tuesday.
that's the other half. Yeah.
There you go.
Nice.
Fucking right. Yeah. There you go. Just like smiles, right? Like, and I appreciate this. I appreciate like even just talking about this. We're not even listening to it right now, but like, it's just like positivity and, and a world where there's like a lot of stuff that you kind of have to like keep yourself balanced on the fucking tightrope. And
Yep.
yeah, I'll put this album on to like keep myself going, and like regardless of like where they are, how much money they make or whatever, like I feel like, these dudes made something of themselves and they did it in their own way. And like, fuck, I mean, if I can, catch a little bit of that, then whatever. It puts a smile on my face. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.